सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ गङ्गणपतये नमः। ॐ श्रीराधाकृष्णाय नमः। ॐ श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Welcome everyone, and welcome also to those watching the classes that are posted to YouTube later. We are continuing with our text. Kakhalu nalang kriyate, kakhalu nalang kriyate, drishta drishtartha sadhana patiyan. Drishta drishtartha sadhana patiyan amuya kanthastitaya Prashnottara Ratnamalikaya Prashnottara Ratnamalikaya. Ko vardhate vinitaha ko vahiyate yodriptaha ko na pratyetavyaha brute yaschanrutan shashwat. I forgot to remind you, I hope you are. So the verses we chant initially after our first verse is material that we covered in the last class. So many of you may not know the Sanskrit. So just to look at the meaning as I'm chanting before you repeat it. Kutra anrute api apapam, kutra anrute api papam, yachoktam dharma rakshartham, ko dharmaha abhimato shishtanam nijakulinanam sadhu balam kim daivam kasadhuhu sarvada tushtaha daivam kim yat sukrutam kasukruti shlaghyate cha yasadbhihi Gruhamedhinascha mitram kim bharya ko grihi cha yo yajate ko yajnyaha Yashrutya vihitaha, Yashrutya vihitaha, Shreyaskaro nrinam, Shreyaskaro nrinam. So we ended here in the last class. Kaha yagnya. Firstly, the verse prior defines, asks who is the best friend or who is the best companion for a griha medhin, for a householder. And we saw the answer was his wife, not any wife. And then it, it asked who is a householder, and the one who performs yajna. And this verse we saw what is yajna, defines what is a ritual, what is yajna. And the scriptures classify yajna into 5 kinds. We have the nitya yajna, the nitya. Let me back up. So yajna, it might seem in today's, your life, doesn't really have any meaning. Because how many of you are doing Agnihotra? How many of you are doing Sandhya Vandan? Firstly, women were not doing these rituals. It was the householder, the Griha Medhin, who was required to do these rituals. So it might seem, you know, what do I care about it at this time? So remember this text, the context of when the text was written, in a time when rituals were extremely important. They form the bulk of everyday living for most people. Even today, there are Orthodox, more traditional families. I think especially in the South, I don't know about North India, where all these yajnas are very much practiced. Especially if you are associated with Vedashala, or with Vedashala means a school where Vedas are taught, even today, or a Yajnashala, then these rituals become very meaningful. So we saw there were scriptures classify rituals into 5 types: the Nitya Karmas or the Nitya Yajnas, those that are to be done every day. This includes something like the Sandhya Vandanam, then the Naimittika Karma, those that are occasional, like a Shraddham, like when you perform a ritual, a yearly ritual for a person who has departed. These Nitya Naimittika Karma are mandatory. There is no choice. You are required to perform them. Then there was the Kamya Karma, which is more optional, desire-based. So if you want, and we saw the example of Putra Kameshti, a ritual that was very frequently performed for the sake of a child. The question might come, so if you perform the ritual, is your wish going to be granted? We don't know. That's what these Vedas were. The Purva Kanda of the Vedas were a lot of belief systems, but they gave the steps for performing, they gave the details for performing any kind of ritual, the rituals that Nitya Naimittika, and also Kamya. So there's no harm in having a desire. There is no harm in having a desire. And performing a puja or a ritual for that fulfillment of the desire, not a bad thing. But if we expect that, so you perform a ritual and you don't get, supposing you perform a ritual to get a promotion. And after the ritual is over, you don't get promoted, you actually lose your job. So has the ritual worked? We cannot do a one-to-one correlation because of the law of karma and free will. So that ritual that you performed, even if it was a kamya ritual for the fulfillment of a desire, and the fruits did not come right away as you expected. Remember, we saw many classes back, you have the seen and the unseen results. And the seen result is you feel good after doing a ritual. And one of the seen results you got was that you lost your job. But just because that ritual was an act of punyam, that pending unseen result can come anytime, either in this lifetime. Hey, who knows, in the next lifetime you might be owning the company that you got fired from. There's no one-to-one correlation, right? Then there were the forbidden karmas, the nishiddha karma, like some tantric pujas and meditations, which are meant specifically to cause harm to somebody else. I don't know why we would want to perform something like that, but that is actually a papam. So those karmas are to be avoided and forbidden. And there's prayaschitta, we saw something like fasting and tapas, expiatory karmas for any action that you did any action that you've done unknowingly, which has caused hurt to someone, has incurred some papam. So the idea was to increase our kamya, increase our nitya naimitika karmas, to minimize our kamya karmas, to completely avoid the forbidden karmas, and do the prayaschitta as needed. And we can extend it a little bit more, because most of us are not doing rituals and yajnas in the current times. Just consider this as any karma. Any action that you do, a daily action, like a nitya, you have to do a puja. Supposing you're doing a puja every day, that's a daily action. Occasional action, supposing you do a more elaborate puja, and I think many of you do that on a festival like Diwali or any festival. So that is you would consider that to be a naimitika. This is not the strict interpretation of these yajnas, nitya naimitika, but you can extend that to your life in the present times, because the rituals may not be applicable to your life. Okay. Kasya kriya saphala yaf punar acharavan shishtaha kashishtaha yo veda pramanavan. So kasya, for whom or whose, kriya, action, is saphala, with results, with fruits. For those of you who may not know, that many of you know Hindi, that in Hindi you would say saphalam, the F sound, but in Sanskrit there is no F sound. That f is actually pronounced p. So it's saphala, not saphala. So the one who is, whose action is said to be successful, who succeeds in life, and the answer is punaha yaha, the one who is who, and acharavan. Acharavan is one whose conduct or actions are proper, are dharmic, and who is a shishtaha. Shishta means one who is disciplined or cultured or learned. There is a nice story in the Puranas of a king. His name was Nahusha, which shows the opposites of one who was not an acharavan and who was not a shishtaha. So at one time in the story says that King Indra, the god of the kings, Indra Deva, had to go leave heaven for doing some penance or something. Indra normally never left his seat. You know, he was always afraid there would be people vying for his throne, so he never left his position in heaven. But he had to do some penance, and he left heaven. So the Devas, remember this is a story, so with a pinch of salt, the Devas wanted to appoint somebody else who would be virtuous and who had a very dharmic life. And they didn't want to pick amongst themselves, because then there would be politics, you know, which Deva would you pick? So they ended up picking a king by the name of Nahusha. This king Nahusha was a mortal, but he was extremely disciplined in his achara, in his daily meditation, other practices, and his good conduct. So once King Nahusha was crowned the king of the heavens, what happens to his daily practices and his good conduct? They evaporate very quickly, because he gets becomes very prideful, and ego starts coming in, because now he's not a king of the mortals, but he's king of the devas. So, and he becomes so, his thinking becomes so adharmic that he goes and demands that Sachi, who was Indra's wife, that she become his wife. Obviously, she refused, but to humble him, she wants to teach him a lesson, and she tells him, okay, I agree, I would accept to become your wife on a condition. And the condition was that you should get the Sapta Rishis, the 7 great sages, to carry you on a palanquin and bring you to the palace. So obviously Nahusha, he's the king of the gods now. He thinks this is an easy task. He goes and he doesn't even ask the 7 rishis. Now these rishis are really great and big timers in their own way. He goes and doesn't even ask them, he just commands them to come and carry his palanquin. And as they were, these are all elderly sages, and as they were carrying him, Nahusha was so consumed with his desire to want to go and go to meet Sachi and fulfill her condition, that he keeps goading the rishis, and he says, faster, faster, go faster, I want to reach the palace soon. And he uses shouts at them, and he uses the words sarpa, sarpa. Sarpa, most of you know, means in Hindi or Sanskrit means a snake. But when sarpa is used as a verb, it comes from the dhatu srip, meaning go, go, to keep moving. So he shouts at them, sarpa, sarpa, and he even kicks one of the sages with his foot, telling him to go faster. And this sage was Sage Agastya. Sage Agastya, many of you know, is a very powerful sage. And the sage, because he gets kicked by this, it's obviously it's disrespectful to kick anybody, what to talk of one of the 7 rishis. So the sage Agastya throws a curse at him, at King Nahusha, and he uses the king's own words, telling him that since you have lost your discipline and good conduct, and you've insulted somebody who deserves respect, I curse you to be born as a snake and live. So sarpa here means snake, and he says sarpa, sarpa, here the sage is meaning snake, and he curses the king to be born a snake and live for 1,000 years as a snake. So in an instant, what happens? Nahusha loses his throne, literally, and he falls from the heaven, again literally and figuratively, and he he falls as a snake in a deep dark forest, and he lives for 1,000 years as this snake. So the moral of the story is, don't worry, you're not going to be born a snake. The moral of the story is, the one who succeeds, kasya kriya saphala, who is the one who is successful, is the one who is an acharavan, who has good conduct, whose behavior is good, who is disciplined and dharmic. The next half of the verse, kaha shishtaha, so it's explaining who is a shishta, who is a cultured or learned person. And the answer might surprise you. It's not somebody who has a PhD or many, many degrees. Yaha Veda Pramanavan, the one Yaha for whom the Vedas are a pramana. Pramana means a valid source of knowledge. Several classes back, we saw that in Vedanta talks about different kinds of pramana. Types of pramana. Pramana means how do we know? The Veda tells us how do we know something? How do we know anything? What is the means by which we can know anything? And the first one was pratyaksha, direct perception. You use your eyes, you see a tree, you use your eyes, that gives you knowledge. Your eyes, visual knowledge of your eyes give you visual knowledge of the presence of a tree. Then there was anumana, inference, and the common example used is you see smoke in a distance, you infer there is a fire. You can't see the fire directly, but your inference. So anumana is inference. Upamana is knowledge that we gain through comparison. We saw the example. This cowherd goes to the forest, he sees a cow that looks very much like the cow he has back home. So he compares the simile, this cow that I'm seeing, this thing I'm seeing in the forest looks very much like the cow I have at home, so this must be also a cow. And then the fourth one was Shabda Pramana, which are words, and this is what the word is, this is what the verse is talking about, words or knowledge gained through the study of the Vedas. So Veda Pramanam, and the other two means of knowledge is Artha Pattihi, Patti, the assumption or the deduction. Example we saw was Devadatta is fasting, he doesn't eat during the day, but he's gaining weight. So what is the deduction? Devadatta is probably eating at night. And the last one we saw was Anupalabdhihi, absence, perception of an absence. So here Shabda is considered words of the Vedas, Veda Pramanam. Why is Veda said to be a Pramanam? In epistemology, in Hindu epistemology, the Vedas provide us about with the thing about, they give us the knowledge about things that we cannot see directly or infer. And what are these? Something like what happens after death. We don't know if there is, we cannot see a heaven, we cannot see a hell. So the Vedas give us that knowledge of what happens, what could be happening after life, how dharma and karma operate. So just in the example a few minutes back, you do a ritual to get a promotion and you do a karma, you lose your job. What is the connection? How does doing a ritual make you lose your job? So we can't see the correlation, and the Vedas are a source for this. And also the Vedas, the Vedanta gives us the ultimate nature of consciousness of ourselves, Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara, and hence Veda is said to be a Pramanam. So the one who is a Veda Pramanam, Yaha Shishtaha, such a person is said to be learned. So this Veda Pramanins are also Astika. Astika is another word, literally comes from Asti, it exists. So for whom the concept of God, the concept of afterlife, concept of any knowledge of anything that cannot be directly or indirectly perceived exists is called an Astika. The one who believes in the Veda as a pramanam, a valid source of knowledge. Ko hataha kriya bhrashta. So in the PDF, the kriya bhrashta is an answer. The question mark doesn't need to be there. Kaha hataha, who is killed or who is destroyed, who is lost? Kriya bhrashtaha. Bhrashta means the one who is fallen or dropped down or dropped from what? From his kriya, his duties, his or her religious obligations, ethical obligations. So basically one who does not do what needs to be done, one who does not do his or her swadharma. And there is another story from the Bhagavata Purana. Many of you may have heard this. This is the story of Jada Bharata. So there was a king who was a very virtuous ruler. His name was Bharata, King Bharata, very diligent in his sadhana, very diligent in all his kriyas, in his achara, in his conduct. And you know, after he ruled his kingdom very justly for many years, he got older and he decided to go to the forest to, you know, this was the Vanaprastha stage of life where he would kind of retire to the forest for doing meditation and more penance, for devoting his time entirely to the focus of God, to know himself. So he goes to the forest, and one day in the forest he sees a deer, a pregnant deer, jumping over a river. And as the deer was jumping over the river, the deer gives birth to a fawn, and the deer dies during fawn birth. So he feels very sad. He takes pity on that baby fawn, because who's going to take care of the baby? and he brings the fawn to his little cottage and he begins to take care of it because the mother is no longer, the deer is no longer alive to even give milk to the fawn. And slowly, over a period of time, he becomes very attached to this. Now the fawn is also growing up to become a deer. Over time, all his sadhana drops away, his kriya drops away. All he does is think about this deer that he's gotten so attached and so obsessed with, and all his practice drops away. Now there is a belief that when we die, at the time of death, and even Lord Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever last thought is in our mind, that's what we end up becoming in a future life. So this king, Bharata, was now towards the end of his life, and all he was thinking about was the deer. So lo and behold, what happens after he dies? He becomes a deer in his next life. He gets reborn as a deer, and after that life is over, he gets born as a Brahmana's son. And because of the punyam he had earned, when he was doing all his kriya and his sadhana, he has earned a lot of punyam. He is able to remember what led to his downfall in that one life when he was in the forest, how he became a deer. So to avoid repeating that same mistake, what he does, he pretends, he lives his life as though he is dumb and deaf and mute, as though he is jada. Jada means inert, and he gets the name Jada Bharata. So he's going about, so that he can, the reason for this is so that he can focus exclusively on his sadhana without getting attracted or obsessed with anybody, anything, any deer, D-E-A-R and D-E-E-R. So one day he was sitting under a tree and a king's palanquin passes by, and one of the palanquin holders, carriers, was not feeling well. So they had to stop there, and they came and asked him, would you come and carry the palanquin? Of course, since he was pretending, living his life as though he was deaf and mute, he didn't answer. So they kind of dragged him, forced him to carry that palanquin. And the four of them were carrying the palanquin, but this Jada Bharata was walking very slowly, very tentatively. So again, like the other story, the king shouts at him and says, hey, are you lazy? Are you stupid? You're carrying the palanquin. Why are you walking like this? And the reason Jada Bharata was walking like that, was walking, limping, avoiding, walking slowly, staggering, was because he wanted to avoid stepping on all the critters that were in the path. He wanted to not cause himsa to even the tiniest ant that was there. So when the king kicks him, again the story, the king kicks him because he got upset, Jada Bharata lays the pole of the palanquin down, and for the first time in his life, he opens his mouth, and he tells the king how the Atma, he actually teaches the king. He says, how is the Atma, the consciousness that is in you, the consciousness that is in me, the consciousness that is there in every single critter, every single microscopic creature on the earth, how is it different? It is the same, and he also explains that Atma, that same consciousness, is not lazy, is not stupid, does not feel pain, does not feel the weight of the palanquin. And there's a long elaboration of this, what he says in the actual Purana. And the king realizes that this is an enlightened person. And very quickly, he begs Jada Bharata to forgive him and becomes his disciple. So how does this verse and story apply to us? Has anything in your life taken you away from your sadhana, from your daily practice? The first thing that drops for most people when they get busy with life is what? Meditation drops, puja drops, exercise drops too, right? most of us, when you don't have time, we don't have time, one of these things drop. So what has taken away, and you don't have to answer me, just for you to think about it for yourself, has anything taken you away? Or what has taken you away? I'm sure something has taken you away from your sadhana. What has taken you away from your sadhana? Family, children, grandchildren, your job, your house, maintenance of the house, your money, your wealth, your stock portfolio, looking at that up and down constantly. All of these things, anything that we get attached to can take us away from our sadhana, from our daily practices. So for us to just be aware and be diligent when this happens. And many of you, you've told me and you've also noticed, so if a habit drops off for, say, a month, just a habit of, say, you do yoga or you walk every day, and somehow winter comes and you don't feel like getting up and walking out in the cold, how hard it is to come back to a habit, how hard it is to come back to that habit. So the same thing with any practice, which is a habit, like a puja or a meditation. So to be aware when our obsessions, when our distractions become obsessions, when our attachments become obsessions to such an extent that that is the main thing we focus on. And it's such a shame, because I know many people who retire, well-off people who retire, and when you ask them, how are you spending your time? The number one answer, or you ask them, how are you going to spend your time? Many people like to travel. Of course, no harm traveling. You're expanding your horizon, you're broadening your sense of, you're broadening your experience. Many people say, or usually it's the wife who complains about the husband, who says, all he does is watch his stock portfolio. No harm watching your stock portfolio, because you need to make sure your assets are preserved for later half of your life, later part of your life. But if this becomes the only thing you do when you retire, there is some rethinking of priorities that is needed, because where are you going to take that wealth with you? Okay. Ko dhanyah sannyasi, ko manyah panditas sadhu. So kaha dhanyah? Who is dhanya? Who is truly blessed or fortunate? The answer, surprisingly, is sannyasi. So why is a sannyasi considered to be fortunate? So most of the sannyasis that you and I probably have come across in our lives are perhaps connected with an ashram. They are well supported, have the support of their students, they're well respected or well known, and are taken care of. But in reality, especially if you go to Haridwar, Rishikesh, where there are many, it's like a town of sannyasis, the reality is that the life of a sannyasi, especially a sannyasi who is a wandering sannyasi, there is something called a parivrajaka vratam. So many sannyasis, very traditional sannyasis, will take this vow of not staying in one place for more than a particular season. So they keep wandering around. So the life of a sannyasi can be really hard. You have to go, firstly, you have to go beg for your alms, for your bhiksha. You have to go for bhiksha to get food. You don't have, if you're not, or you go to, like in many ashrams in Rishikesh, they will have these bhandaras where they feed hordes of sadhus. And Puja Swamiji's ashram in Rishikesh, Dayananda ashram, is one of the better ashrams, because they give very nice bhiksha, they give very nice bhandaras where the food is really nice. They also offer money and clothes to the sannyasis. But for most, in reality, for most sannyasis, it's a very hard life, because they don't have basic necessities of food, clothing, and shelter. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. You go for bhiksha. Imagine you go for bhiksha, and you get, in your bhiksha pot, we used to have a kamandalu here, you have a bhiksha pot, somebody will give you alms, bhiksha food, you have no idea what that food is going to be. You have no idea how it's going to taste like. You'd have no idea how it's prepared. You give the benefit of a doubt that food is given fresh to a sannyasi. You could only eat what you got in your bowl. You can't choose. You can't get to eat your favorite dish. What about when you go out for bhiksha on a particular day? You don't get any food. You have to fast. There is no way to get food. You end up being hungry. What about clothing? Most sannyasis have their only one pair of clothing, their orange dhoti and angavastram that they wear. Many of them don't even have another pair where you could put one for wash and wear the other one. Sannyasis don't have walk-in closets, pretty obvious. You don't have a choice of clothes. What about housing, shelter to sleep in? Most places, unless, like I said, if you're connected with an ashram, they would have maybe get a small kutia or a small room. But many sannyasis would end up sleeping under a tree or on the banks of a river. Critters, animals, noise, sound, mosquitoes in India. So this verse is saying, Kaha dhanyaha, who is blessed is a sannyasi. So all these conditions doesn't seem to us that it's a blessed life. But why is it saying that a sannyasi is very fortunate? Because of what he or she possesses, quote unquote possesses. Not that single pair of dhoti and angavastram, not that bhiksha bowl, but rather their wealth, the inner knowledge, the ultimate knowledge that leads to complete freedom, that leads to moksha, the ultimate recognition of oneness of all. The second half of the verse is saying, Kaha manyaha, who is respected, and panditaha, a wise person or a scholar, who is a sadhu, and we saw in last class in verse 48, sadhu was defined as sarvada tushtaha, the one who is contented always. So somebody who is a sannyasi, who is this living in this extreme dire conditions, dire kind of life, can all be a sannyasi who is living like this, or any sannyasi, any sadhu, who is always contented, who is always tushtaha, and who is also a panditaha. Such a person is to be respected. Kasevyaha yo data, ko data yortitriptam atanute, kaha sevyaha, who is to be worshipped or served. Yaha, the answer is yaha data. Data we've seen before, the one who gives generously. So in Hinduism, in our scriptures, we recognize that everything in this universe is a continuous act of giving. So for example, the sun is continuously giving, the water is continuously giving, the earth is continuously nurturing. And all this giving is an aspect of Ishvara's order, of the divine nature of Ishvara. So a person who is giving, who is considered to be worshipful. Another perspective is somebody who gives generously does not see any difference between himself or herself and the person given to, the one who needs the help. So seeing the oneness in all, is really the highest state of non-duality. So a person who is a data, who is a giver, and who sees this oneness in all is considered to be worshipful or could be served. And kaha data, who is a giver, who is a true giver, yaha atanute. Atan means to stretch. So the one who stretches, literally the one who gives what? Arthi triptim, gives until triptim, until the satisfaction or happiness of who? Of the arthin, the one who is in need. That is somebody who has wholeheartedly satisfied the needs of the needy person, of the person asking for help. And what to give? Normally, for most of us, when we think of an act of charity, of giving, what comes to mind? The easiest thing, especially if you are, have some amount of money, is writing a check, dropping it in the donation box, or mailing. Of course, nowadays nobody mails. You can do your donation online itself. But the scriptures say danam, the act of giving. There are 4 kinds of danam. One is a vitta danam, this giving of wealth, giving of material resources, money, giving. In olden days, they would like build temples or dig a well. You're giving money to fulfill those things that help society. Then there is vidya danam, giving of knowledge, giving of skills, talent, your education, or spiritual wisdom. I've heard, some people would say, oh, I know, I've studied Vedanta, but I don't know enough to give. I don't know enough of it to give. I cannot teach. And that's fine, but you can share it with others in your circle. Of course, caveat is if they ask. If they don't ask, don't go and say, hey, you're Brahman, why are you worried about this silly thing going on in your life? So the caveat is if somebody asks you, you can share whatever you have learned. Sharing your skills and talents. Many of you are very computer savvy, IT savvy. Somebody needs help, share it. Teaching even there's this, I forget, in libraries you can volunteer service of teaching English as a second language. You can teach that to many non-speaking, non-English speaking people. You can give any knowledge or any skill or any talent. Some of you might be musicians or paint or have some skills. Share it, give it to others. Again, caveat, if they ask. The third kind of danam is annadanam, giving of food. This was very big in ancient times and even now, because people, when they go on yatras, pilgrimage, they stop at all these holy kshetras, these holy places, and food is given to them free of charge as part of this annadanam. Did I miss some? Vidyadanam, Vittadanam, Vidyadanam, and the fourth one was Abhayadanam, giving of fearlessness. Abhaya means without fear, meaning providing comfort to somebody who is going through a hard time, who is fearful. Say somebody's got a terminal diagnosis or a difficult diagnosis, illness, giving them some comfort, being with them, sharing their life, sharing their fear, helping them in whatever way they need. That is another kind of dhanam. So anything we are blessed with, we can share or give to others. There is an interesting observation of dhanam with regard to Advaita Vedanta. So there's only one consciousness that is the same in everyone, in every living being. Then basically when you're giving, it's like you're taking a coin out of one pocket, your right pocket, and putting it in the left pocket. It's really giving is considered, it's actually a karma that is required for us to do. So when you recognize that you are non-separate from everyone and everything, then this act of giving doesn't really become, I am the giver, you are the receiver. It's just you're giving because that's the right thing to do. You have the resources, the other person needs the resources. And this is something really that our Dayananda Anugraha Fund that our Swamiji has established more than a decade ago, is to give to those in our lineage, sannyasis, brahmacharis, sannyasinis, who may not have the means to survive, who may not have the means to live a meaningful life. So, and I remember many times Swamiji has mentioned, why are we giving them? Why are we giving this? Because his simple answer was, we have the resources, it is our duty to give. And that's such a profound way to look at giving. It's not something that you give and feel good about, oh, I gave, and take it off on your taxes. You just give it because it's the right thing to do. You have it, somebody else needs it, you give it. Kim bhagyam dehavatam, kim bhagyam dehavata, arogyam, arogyam, kahpali, kahpali, krushi krita, krushi krita. So kim bhagyam, what is to be valued, what is valuable, for whom? Dehavatam, dehavat, for one who has a body, for anybody, for any living being, and the answer is pretty simple, arogyam, meaning good health. There is a subhashita which says, arogyam paramam bhagyam, swasthyam sarvartha sadhanam. So arogyam, good health, is the paramam bhagyam, is the greatest fortune, and I think that's where this verse really comes from. Why? Because it is swasthyam sarva artha sadhanam, because it is the means, the sadhanam, for what? Sarva artha, for pursuing all our arthas, for pursuing the four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So if you don't have good health, this is kind of pretty obvious. Most of you, if you have something you're struggling with, you know the importance of good health. So if you don't have good health, if you don't have a healthy body, you cannot do good karma if you're bedridden, right? Physical karma. You cannot build your assets if you don't have the energy resources. You cannot even enjoy your life. You cannot enjoy any karma if you're in constant pain. And what about moksha? You cannot think of pursuing moksha when your mind is so distracted from physical illness. So this verse is talking about arogyam as physical health, but we can certainly extend this to mental health. If you are suffering from depression or any kind of mental illness, you know, if you or your family is suffering from that, you know how mental illness can derail not only your life, but everybody around you. So if you are suffering from any mental illness, any mental challenges, it is very important to get adequate help, to go for, just like you would get if you have a chronic pain, you're going to go and see your primary care doctor. So if you have chronic depression, just go and see your mental health therapist, go and see a psychiatrist, your therapist. If you don't get the help needed for physical health or mental health, you're kind of wasting this precious gift of life, because you're not going to be able to do anything, either worldly or spiritual. And kahapali, who enjoys or reaps the fruits of what? Of their krishi, who reaps the fruit of their labor? And the answer is krishikrit. Krishi means, krishikrit means a farmer, or the one who tills cultivates the soil. The idea is one who works hard. And we already know working hard alone isn't going to give us the fruits. There is a unseen factor, anugraha daivam, that is also comes into play. So why is it said that a farmer, krishikrit, one who cultivates the soil, enjoys the fruit? Most of us know that farming, a lot of the results of farming is not really in the farmer's hand. So many factors come into play: the weather, the soil, the amount of rain, the amount of sunlight. I found a saying on the internet that says, a farmer, so the farmer really has a very tough life. The farmer is the only person in our economy who buys everything at retail, who sells everything at wholesale, and pays the freight both ways. So the farmer's life is really tough. It's a high stakes game where nature and daivam is so involved. So how do we extend this to our own lives? There is a verse in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47, which is probably the most misunderstood verse in the Gita. And it says, Karmani eva adhikaraha te. Many of you have heard this verse. Karmani eva adhikaraha te. Adhikaraha, the choice or control. Karmani eva, so Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have choice or control only in karmani, only in your actions. For you, there is choice only in your actions. And here, adhikara is not the Hindi adhikara is like a right. Adhikara means right, I think, in Hindi. Here, adhikara means choice or control. Ma phaleshu kadachana. Ma phaleshu, not over the results. Phala, results of your actions, kadachana, at any time. Ma karma phala hetur bhuhu, ma te sangaha astu akarmani. So ma bhuhu, do not become what? Karma phala hetuhu. Do not become the hetu, the cause of your karma phala, of the results. Do not think you are the agent or the cause. Do not think you have the results under your control. Ma te sangaha astu akarmani. For you, ma te, may there not be attachment or inclination, sangaha, for what? Akarmani. So the flip side is, if you think you have choice only over your actions, you would, and not over the results, you might think, oh hey, why should I do anything? I don't have control over the results. So Lord Krishna is warning, do not become ma astu sangha astu akarmani. Do not become attached to inaction, to not doing anything. So the message that we have to get from this verse is, who enjoys the fruits? The one who works hard, but the one who works hard with the right attitude, with the attitude of Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. We saw that in a prior class, surrendering every action to Ishvara and accepting the results as prasada, Ishvara prasada. With that attitude, we can reap the benefits of all our actions. Again, we don't know in this lifetime when. It can be right today. Well, hey, maybe you apply, you do a karma for that promotion, and you get a much bigger promotion than you thought. So we never know when the results of our action, when we will get the result of any action. So that's a good place to end. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you all for coming. I'll see you next week.